Here we go. You're back here on the Gill Athletics Track and Field Connections podcast. So grateful that once again, I can't believe you guys. You're just a glutton for punishment. You keep pressing play every single week, and I'm super excited, super grateful for all of our listeners around the world. Actually, it's kind of crazy, but so grateful that you joined us here. My name is Mike Cunningham. I'm the National Business Development Manager here for Gill, and big part of my job is to host this crazy thing, the Gill Connections podcast. So I'm super excited. Before I introduce today's guest, when we're recording this, not necessarily when you're listening to this, but when we're recording this, the Netflix show Sprint just came out, and I was able to catch 2 episodes last night, and I'm all in. I just want to encourage you, if you have Netflix, go watch this series. And probably more importantly, because I think us track people and, social media is telling me that, we all love it. It's a great, if you haven't been able to catch any episodes, maybe you will this weekend. It really is fantastic. It's super cool to see kind of the behind the scenes of so far Noah and Sha'Carri. And, for me, I know Lance and Dennis, they're coaches. And so it's kind of cool to see, my friends on TV doing their craft, which is always cool. But I think more importantly, I think as track people, we need to get non-track people to watch it. I think that is going to be key for whether Netflix picks up another track and field series, whether we grow the culture and popularity of our sport outside of just the Olympics and things like that. So just want to encourage you, if you're a track person and you have Netflix and you haven't watched it, go watch it. And if you have, encourage your non-track people, your non-track family, friends, social circles to give it a try. And who knows, maybe we'll pick up a couple of extra track fans, and we can always use that. Speaking of track fans, I just know this guy's a track fan. Today we're gonna go to the tippy top. We're gonna go the very northeast. I've been there once in my entire life, and we're gonna explore what's going on there with the Black Bears. Help me welcome the head coach from the University of Maine, the wise, the wonderful Mr. Adam Ward. Adam, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Mike. How are you, man? Thanks so much.
Doing awesome, man. Thanks for sitting there through my long intro. I try not to make intros too long because it's kind of awkward. You're just sitting there like, cool. When do I talk?
I look, I just like you were talking about, I'm a huge fan of the sport. Anything we can do to promote it and grow the sport, I think is phenomenal. I'm old enough to remember when you couldn't even watch track on TV, except it was like maybe the trials and maybe the Olympics and the birth of things like flow track and runner space and, all these other different avenues. And then now you've got other streaming kind of platforms that are picking it up and stuff like that. Stuff is, I get it. There's a pay to play kind of model with some of that stuff. But honestly, like I remember when like people would used to say, I would pay to watch track on TV. And now like, we've got all these options and stuff. And, just coming off the Olympic trials, like that was just an amazing,
phenomenal, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, there wasn't a moment of anything, just, tons of great drama and things like that. And I think it's hard to not be, obviously you and I both are kind of super invested in it, but I think it's hard to not be a fan of the sport when you start to just really, the personal stories and how much time people put into the, events and things like that for, 3 throws to make a final, right, or 3 jumps to make a final, like that. Everyone matters, every position matters in what you do in terms of races and things like that. And so, I think it's just great. And in the new Netflix series, I'm looking forward to checking it out myself and stuff. And
that's what I was going to ask before you get into your story, and you can be excused to say that you haven't. You kind of alluded maybe you haven't, because it literally came out yesterday when we record this. Have you been able to check out an episode yet or no?
I have not yet. I'm dying to, because like, again, I'm seeing all the social media promotions.
Yeah.
It's probably have to fight my wife and daughter to watch it on TV, because they're watching Netflix for all the other stuff that comes on there.
Sure.
But I'll definitely have to square away some time for that. But no, those kind of things like that I love documentaries and stuff anyway, and especially documentary about track and all those kind of things. Like, you never know. Like I'm again going back to being kind of a fan and kind of a track nerd, is I'm always looking for, hey, maybe I can watch this and there's something I can pick up as a coach. It can make me better, or, things like that, or little life lessons, things like that. I think those things are always just kind of neat.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious. One, like I mentioned in that intro, what's the popularity for non-track people? We should be geeked up for it because we've been
Mhm.
asking for this. We've been asking for the Last Chance U of track and field and anything on Netflix, and they're finally giving us. So we should be, hopefully, sometimes we're our own worst enemy in this sport, but hopefully we support it as track coaches. But I'll be curious to see what the non-track person. I have a brother-in-law who watched that. I think Netflix had like an F1 series or something like that. He was not a fan of F1 before, but now
Yep.
he is. So my hope is like, oh, are there more people like him for track and field? And two, the second thing I'm interested in with this Netflix series is, it's called Sprint. So in the first two episodes were about Noah, and the second one was about Sha'Carri. So I'm assuming the whole thing is going to be about 100, 200, 400, maybe some hurdles or something. I don't know. I'm assuming we're not going to get any shot putters, jumpers, long distance, etc. How will the track community support that? Is our distance coaches going to be like, oh, they should have done distance and blah, 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 blah? Because, we're having that a little bit with MJ, with Michael Johnson, with his league of like, hey, no field events at all, really. We're starting to attack. And it's like, this is why I say we're kind of our own worst enemy sometimes. So instead of supporting it, we're automatically attacking it. So I'll be curious to see how that plays out.
Oh, no, for sure. And I think that's one of those things where I was just talking to my assistant coach about this the other day. It was that hour on Sunday was probably the most exciting hour. I mean, because you just got meet record after meet record. You got
You're talking about the Olympic trials.
yeah, the trials. Yeah, sorry, the trials. You've got, a world record set at the end. You've got, I mean, even I think I forget the young lady's name, but she broke the meet record in the jazz. I mean, like it
Yeah,
was,
Maggie.
and it was phenomenal. And so like you're just like there's just nonstop like just hit after hit after hit. Now, granted, not every meet is always like that, but when you've got like something on the line, such as making a spot in the Olympics, you're giving your best, and that brings out everyone's best, and it brings off obviously record opportunities and stuff. And I think we were talking about that it's like that's the one thing about our sport that's tough is when you think of all the events, it's hard to make that fit into an appealing TV window and then make everyone happy. And I think that's where again, I know he doesn't have the field events, and I'm not saying that that's not something they haven't considered down the road, but to launch things early, he's probably thinking, and I have no insight on this, but if I was thinking, in terms of how to make this quickly appealing, something that sponsors and money are going to come on board with, what's going to fit in a
Right.
fairly condensed TV window, because you just can't show 4, 5, 6 hours of uninterrupted.
Right.
It's just, you think about every other sport, they're all
to
condensed into about 2-hour blocks.
to get the non-track participated fan to watch. That's correct. And honestly, maybe the person who participated in track isn't going to watch that either, because, on the high school side, I've said this many times, boys and girls track and field together is the most participated sport. On the college side, men and women together is the most participated sport. So you're more likely, think about this, Adam, when you go into the grocery store to get your bread and milk and your rice-a-roni, whatever you might get, you're more likely to randomly run into someone who participated in some form or fashion of track and field than you are someone who played organized basketball or football, swimming, gymnastics, etc. So we have all these people who did track for many, maybe one season, half a season, 4 seasons, etc.
Yeah.
Athletically very good, went to college, or athletically not, but they still had an experience. Those guys and gals are most likely not watching track on TV right now. And that's
Yep.
an issue. Or they're on top of that, not going to a track meet. They're not going to their local high school to watch the conference champs or the invite or the duel or whatever. And that's a problem, because we have people who don't even like football that are going to NFL games. They're going for the experience and things like that. And they know, to your point, it's going to be a 3-hour or 4-hour window, and there's going to be an entertainment at the half. There's a lot of things to look forward to than just what's actually happening on the field. And with track, we don't really have that at this moment to what we're doing. So we'll see what MJ's. Hey, speaking of the trials real quick again before we start hopping into your story here, what was your favorite thing, man? There's a ton that went on. You mentioned that last hour, which was just holy crap crazy, but there was 2 weeks of this thing. What was your favorite takeaway from this year's Olympic trials?
For me, it was just seeing, especially obviously being a collegiate coach, was seeing so many of the collegians just step up and just,
that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, just do some amazing things across a multitude of events. I mean, from the young lady from Oregon, the shot put who did
Yeah, Jada.
well there. Yeah, she, I mean, I was at NCAA's and watched her throw that 20-meter throw there, and I was like, holy cow, like that's crazy, so that was impressive. Obviously, McLaughlin is always, I mean, just
Pretty special right now.
super smooth. Her and Rye Benjamin, I mean, the 400 hurdle, just, phenomenal what those guys are, and she is, just what they're doing. I mean, looking at the women's 1500-meter final where, I mean, to think there were that many women that broke 4 minutes. I mean, it's, you feel bad for the ones that like ran massive PRs and they still didn't make the team. It's like, a 357 in most years probably would have put you on the podium. But this year, just, I mean, it's the state of where American track and field is now is just phenomenal to watch. I mean, the collegians coming on. I mean, the whole story, even like behind the scenes with, James Corrigan trying to get the standard because he got he was third in the
steeplechaser.
And he literally 4 days later runs out and tries to, go out to Philadelphia, Penn and run the standard. And he does, and they show that on Flow Track and stuff as well. And it's like, it's just wild. You're watching these things, you're like, there's drama within drama, what I'm saying? So there were just so many great takeaways from that. And I think, knowing a couple of competitors and stuff as well in some of those events, like the women's hammer and things like that and stuff too. And I think that's just, it just kind of, makes those things just that much more exciting and you get invested in those stories and stuff as well. So,
Yeah, I agree. I do love the collegians that have success. Because, I love busting myths, and there's always this myth about, oh, college coaches just burn athletes out. They just, if you got a good athlete, what's funny is you hear it on both sides as if the other side doesn't do it, but then you just still do hear both sides. If you're really good and you go to a quote unquote Power 5 school, Power 4 school, they burn you out because they're always going to Penn relays and the SECs and then reading all this kind of stuff. And then if you're at a quote unquote small school, well, because you're a really good athlete, they use you in 5 events every meet, and you're going to be burned out. And then here we go to the Olympic trials and we've got collegian here, collegian there. I kind of like that because it's like, guys, our college coaches have kind of got this figured. Not everybody, just like not all professional, it's like takes all kinds. We have all kinds, I should say. So
everybody makes mistakes, man. Everybody,
exactly. That's right.
When you got something figured out, I mean, that's, no, for sure.
That's right. I agree. And so I do love hearing that. So before we hop in, when we had this scheduled for you to hop on with us here, and again, I'm very grateful for you being here. There was something with your name, and someone's going to think I'm making fun of you. He actually brought this up before I did, so this is full permission to go into this topic. He's gonna give us the skinny behind this. I was like, there's something with your name for some reason. It invoked Batman for me, and I can't remember because Adam Ward wasn't Batman, right? It was. I don't know. You tell me, because you said, hey, people always think about Batman. Funny. So what is this?
My parents didn't pick my name because of this. It just, obviously, it just kind of happens this way. So I'm obviously not that old that I was alive when this television series was on, but the 1960s Batman television show had the stars of Adam West and Burt Ward.
That's it. Okay. So
Adam West was Batman and Burt Ward was Robin. And so obviously, as I'm a little kid, and there's a lot of folks that are growing up that were fans of this show, they would always be like, Adam Ward, oh, you're Batman and Robin. And so I would hear that a lot.
Both.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, when I was a little kid, I was like, what are you talking about? And as I got a little older and kind of my dad was like, oh, yeah, this is what what they're referring to. And, you eventually catch some, episodes in syndication or whatever. You're like, oh, okay. And, as a little kid, you're kind of like, oh, this is cool. Cause it's before all the big boom of, I even watched this before even like the original Superman back in 1978 or whatever it was that came out and stuff. And, so you eat this stuff up when you're like, 7, 8 years old or whatever. But yeah, no, it's kind of funny. Occasionally now I still will hear it from older folks now and then. But yeah, no, when I was a little kid, I'd hear it all the time from folks. Probably my age that grew up with that stuff. But yeah, no, it's funny because I didn't even know who the heck those guys were, So.
It's funny because your name is not Adam West or Burt Ward. It's a combination. And plenty of us have combinations of two. I get Richie Cunningham a lot for us of an older set that remember that and all that kind of stuff. But but it was just so funny. It literally, it did invoke. It was like, there's something I could not put my finger on it, but it was like, something Batman, but I knew his name was not Adam Ward. That's what was tripping me out.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that's cool. I appreciate your humor with that. That's pretty funny. Well, like Batman, one of the most popular, I used to collect comic books back in the day, and one of the most popular comic books to collect in that genre is the origin story that, Superman #1, how did he become Superman? Batman, how did he become, we all know, well, if you don't know how Batman became Batman, it's a cool little origin story, very sad origin story, actually. So when we start thinking about you, let's dive into your episode, your comic book #1, if you will, assuming that you were a track athlete, maybe you weren't, you're going to tell us, where does track and field begin for you?
Yeah, no, that's great. It's funny because when I look back, it almost, if it hadn't been for some friends of mine, I probably never would have gotten involved in track because it wasn't something that I was ever exposed to and things like that. So I grew up in a small town, originally like a little town in Beech Grove, Kentucky, really small rural area. And then did what most kids did, you rode bikes, you kind of ran around, you played, climbed trees, played t-ball, did like like what we called like junior pro basketball, which is like, just little kids basketball stuff. And then as I got older, just because you're from Kentucky, so I'm a, University of Kentucky, born and raised basketball fan, you're watching like, the Joe B. Hills and, the Rick Pitino's and all those kind of things like that and stuff. You're watching those teams do well. And so, I thought, okay, well, I want to play basketball in middle school and high school and stuff. And I did. I tried out in middle school, didn't make the team. That didn't deter me. So I just kind of worked at it, made the team in high school as a freshman. And of course, at that point, everyone knew like the Michael Jordan story.
I was just about to say, it's like, you're Jordan.
Jordan got cut in middle school and all this kind of stuff like that. And of course, my problem was I didn't have Michael Jordan's height. I was probably 5'8" in high school. And so I was way
I'm
too
sure that's the only reason, Adam. Keep going.
Yeah. But so I played as a freshman, and then started trying out and playing as my sophomore year in high school. But as my high school basketball coach told many of us one day at practice, this tall kid kind of came in and he's like, "Oh, boys, I hate to tell you, but can't coach height." And I'm like, all right, well, the writing was on the wall. So myself and 4 other guys decided, like, you know what, we've got to find another sport that we can do that's not going to rely on, a physical characteristic you can't control to determine your ability or playing time and things like that. And so a couple of guys, they had been baseball players and stuff like that as well. So they went and played baseball. Myself and another friend of mine, we went out for track and field the spring of our sophomore year. Because I had a bunch of friends that they started running cross country in middle school and track and field and loved it. And, we'd play pickup basketball in the summers and stuff. And so they kept going, "Come on, you got to try this." And I'm like, all right, whatever, it's running around in a circle. How much fun can it be? But I'll be honest, from the day one that I started doing it, I just fell in love with the sport. I mean, I did a little bit of everything. I ran like the 800, the 1600, the 32. I remember even my coach even let me try throwing the disc and things like that, and trying high jump and stuff, and just trying to figure out, obviously, kind of, where, you kind of fall in terms of what, you're interested in stuff. And that, and our coach was really good about trying to let folks kind of find their own path. But yeah, no, I think, that was really kind of how it started. And then I didn't think about running cross country that fall, but then a bunch of my friends, same guys, were just like, "You got to try it," And so like, I'm like, all right, whatever. Running through the woods sounds crazy. I don't know what you're talking like. And so again, same thing. I did it and just fell in love with it again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's fun. It's tough. It's a very tough sport. I mean, there are many times, I'm sure even college athletes now, sometimes they'll watch, golfers or something like that. And they're like, why didn't I pick that sport? But it's so rewarding. It's definitely one of those things where I think track and field and cross country have given so much to me in my life and taken me so many different places that I wouldn't have gone on my own or had the opportunity to do. And I definitely think those roots and starting in high school and then the teammates and coaches I had there really kind of, obviously opened the doors for me and what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I think every coach, if they could figure out how to bottle what you're describing up, would do that and then give it to every kid in their school and have them join the team. When you think about that, what was it? Because you talked about, like, you said the words, "I fell in love." And at first you had some, I'm gonna call it aversion to it. Like, man, running through the woods, man, running circles. Like, I don't really know. That's my jam. But then it's like, oh, then I did it and fell in love. When you think back to it, and I know it's no one thing is the one thing. So it's a combination of 10, 11, 12. You know, if I made you list 100 things, you could probably get down to 100, you know, something that was 0.1% part of the equation. But when you think about the majority, like the one thing, what was it about the sport? Was it the camaraderie with team? Was it a coach that believed in you? Sound like you had pretty solid coaches even in basketball and stuff. So, you know, was it a coach? Was it runner's high? You know, I got done doing that 3 miler and boy, it sucked, but boy, those endorphins kicked in. I was like, I've never felt this drug. Was it improvement? You went from not even being able to finish a 3 mile run to like, holy crap, I'm now doing three. Like when you think back to all the things, what was like the one thing that was the love part?
Yeah, definitely. I would say it was definitely the camaraderie with the guys because I knew a lot of them obviously from outside the sport and stuff. But just spending time and hanging out with those individuals and stuff, and just kind of their support and just again what we could achieve as a group. And I would tack onto that. My high school coach was hugely influential in my life. Coach Craig Hopkins. He's now obviously retired and he actually officiates now and stuff, and I still occasionally will message each other and things like that. But he was definitely largely influential. And I've told him this too, because the reason I moved to Owensboro, Kentucky, which is where I went to Apollo High School, and it's where Rex Chapman went to high school. So basketball connection stuff there. But the reason we moved there is my parents got divorced when I was in middle school. And so saw my dad, but didn't see him on a regular basis. My coach in high school essentially became like a father figure to me. And I really looked up to him, and he provided a lot of just guidance and support and then even occasionally even some tough love and things like that. We would complain about, we're not getting the notoriety or something like that. I remember he just kind of tore into us, but it wasn't out of, just spite of being like, oh, you guys are focused on the wrong things and you're not. It was more just like, look, you guys need to realize, like, if you're worried about other people's approval all the time, you're holding yourself back. You're not going to accomplish things you want because you're not worried about making sure you're approving of yourself and of each other. If that's what you need to be most concerned about. If you're worried about what other people think, you're always going to be kind of held back. And so I think those kind of valuable lessons and things like that, and just his, just general, his approval obviously was important, and his guidance and stuff. And I remember I'd go to his office at times and ask him questions about things, or ask him about help and things, and not just, running, but then other things in life and stuff. And he was always just really quick to sit down and talk, and was always great. And, his wife, Sue Ellen, and stuff as well. So, but yeah, no, I think those two things probably largely were big reasons why I kind of fell in love with the sport. And then, maybe a third thing that, which I think is sometimes that we're gluttons for punishment in this regard, is the hard work and then seeing that pay off. That's the one thing I think in track is, like, especially if you can handle some delayed gratification, you are going to see the results of that work pay off. And if I can hijack the conversation for a quick second, one great, I guess, example for me in high school, that was that junior year. We had a lot of talent on our team, but we underachieved. We just probably weren't as focused as we needed to be. And we did well. We had some speckled success, but it wasn't anything major. And I remember after that cross country season that fall, a lot of us just sat down. We looked at each other, and I can't remember the exact room or the context of where we were, but I remember we all just said, we're like, we're going to be seniors next year. Our coaches probably only got a couple of years left of coaching because he'd been coaching for, at that point, almost 30 years. And we're like, do we want him to go out on a bad note? Do we want to go out as seniors on a bad note? Because we didn't even place that well in regionals, so we didn't make state and things like that. And so we're like, no. Next year, we're going to do something to come back, and we're going to make state as a team, and we're going to send, give our coach one last trip, because it'd been a couple of years since they'd made at Apollo the state championship as a team. Some individuals had made it and stuff like that and competed well. And so it wasn't like we did anything, I don't have the heroic story where we went in the summer, we ran 500 miles through the summer. We probably just played more pickup basketball and stuff, but we we did try to make sure that, when coach gave us workouts or things to do in the summer, we did try to do as many of those things as we could. We try to take, a little bit better care of ourselves. We try not to, I think every kid in high school probably ate a bunch of junk food and fast food and, try to do some things where we took a little bit better care of ourselves. And we did with pretty much the exact same team. I think we had added one kind of like in-city transfer guy that kind of came to our school because his parents moved through the district or whatever. But I mean, just one guy's not going to all of a sudden make you a significantly better team, especially in cross country. But we turned ourselves around, and we finished top 3 in the region that fall, which was, we were ecstatic. We're bouncing around, and we went to state and we finished, I believe I'd have to fact check me on this. I believe we were top 5, 6, or 7, I think, that year, from not even making it the year before. We finished pretty well in the state that year. That was kind of for us. Now, we didn't have maybe the great meet at state we wanted to. I know I had a terrible, I just felt awful. I don't know what it was, but but it was a great ending for us. We had accomplished something that we'd kind of put our mind to. It was something that, again, there were like, I think 5 of us that were seniors on that squad, that were, leaving the next year and stuff like that. So, it was one of those things, but again, I think it's definitely something in this sport where if you put your mind to doing something, especially as a collective group, you can accomplish that. It's just a matter of kind of, how much, time and effort and dedication you're going to put into it and stuff. It can pay off for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons you gave there that you learned through Coach Hopkins. The 3 that I thought about the most, I kept thinking about while you're telling that great story. One is, you told the story about how, Coach Hopkins became a father-like figure for you. And I think, you grew up in a divorced family, same, by the way, a lot of same experiences there. But even for our kids who are growing up in the quote unquote, 2.5 kids, dog, all that kind of stuff. Parents are together. I look at my wife, her parents have been together for, 40 years. And I'm like, man, you're so lucky, man. I don't think my parents were together, honestly, 40 days. I'm being dead honest here. So, but I think we forget sometimes, or it's easy for us to take it for granted. Cause Coach said, hey, if you guys, I'm paraphrasing here, but if you guys are going to live your life based on the opinions of others, you're going to have a long, hard life. Right. And so when you said that, and I was like, oh, that's cool, because that's what I tell my kid. My kid will be like, oh, my kid, my friend's this, or I don't want to do because I'll be embarrassed. And then I started thinking, it's like, oh, but you know what? If a coach said that to my son, he might actually listen. I'm the dad. So he's going to, and I think sometimes as coaches, we forget, like, oh yeah, we're reinforcing some things that parents and mentors in these kids' lives say, but they don't receive because it's my mom or my dad, but they look up to you. They put you, the coach, up on a pedestal. You say that, the grass is blue, and they like, well, man, maybe I need to start believing that the grass is blue. Coach said it. So I think we forget that sometimes. The other thing that I thought you said was pretty cool when you talk about seeing results. And I think that's, it's really important for our coaches. And a lot of us are doing this, the times and results and publish, I know Feed the Cats has that, record, rank, publish, or something like that. But I think, the real key to that, whether you agree with, Tony and Feed the Cats or not, we're not here to discuss that. But I do believe in the showing, like you almost have to prove to a kid, like, look, you used to run this, and now a week or a month later or a season later, you're running this. Like, look, we're working together. We're doing that. I think that's critical. And sometimes we get into just shut up and do the workout, and, it'll show up on the meet. And it's like, man, we only get, a handful of opportunities to do meets. We need to show this in practice. I thought that was really important there.
That's so true. And I often tell the athletes, especially when they're like, oh, coach, I want to do this, or I want to do this, or they're disappointed in a season. And I'm like, let's take a step back. Let's look at the big picture. Where were you, like you just said, where were you a year ago, and look at where you are now? If you were doing what you're doing now a year ago, you'd been ecstatic. Mm-hmm. Now we get not complacent, but we
comparison. It really does come down to comparison.
It is. It's a tough thing because, again, with social media and, not throwing the blame, but like Strava, things like that, you're getting bombarded by it so many times. And it's hard to be like comfortable in your own skin at times. And, with, And that's a whole nother podcast we could probably jump into. But I think the thing for a lot of times that I try to do is give them to understand, like, look at where you are now. We talk about consistency in our program a lot. And that's one of the things that like I learned through high school and college and being a volunteer at Murray State University. And I even volunteered starting out at Augusta University. It was Augusta State University then before I became a head coach at Augusta University. But like the one thing I learned through all this time is like the more consistent you can be, not only does that one, it gives you something you can call upon at a moment's notice, no matter what. So like, if I'm using a random, if I'm an 18-minute 5K person, and I'm kind of consistently that person, on a bad day, I'm 18 minutes. On a good day, I'm at least 18 minutes, and maybe in the right conditions, in the right race, I can be a little bit better. But it's like, you kind of always know what you can kind of do, where, it's the opposite thing, where it's like, if you're kind of always looking for the quick fix or the fancy workout or whatever it may be to kind of get like the big thing, like, yeah, you can maybe do that once, but it's like, can you call upon that every time and stuff? And so we try to be careful of like the big flashy stuff, or, trying to make, I'm not saying, look, I've made my fair share of complicated workouts, but try not to make a lot of complicated workouts and things like that. But I think consistency, we talk about that on a regular basis. If you can be consistent, and that's kind of things that bleed over into other aspects of your life and stuff too, then, you're going to see success at some point. Again, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be next week, but it may be a month from now, whatever. And then you can kind of, like you just said, again, you look back and say, wow, from last season to here, look at what I've done. I mean, I've had those conversations with athletes at Augusta University, here at the University of Maine, where, I'm like, they'll be down on something. I'm like, well, where were you running in high school? Oh, I was a 545, 1600 meter runner. And I'm like, well, you just ran, a 1500 and 446. That's significantly faster in only a couple of years. Like that's pretty, outstanding success. Or, I had a young man years ago who, he was a basketball player, ran maybe a year of track and cross country. He was a guy who was an 18-minute 5K guy in high school. Within a year, he was running 16:22. Within a couple of years, he was running in the low, kind of mid to low 15s. I didn't get to finish coaching him, but he broke 15 just last year. And I'm like, wow. It's what it's all about. It's like taking someone from where they were to where, they didn't even think they could possibly get to, is phenomenal. And I think that's what I love about coaching, and what I love about what I think our sport can do is those benchmarks are things that we can see. You want to be careful about not comparing yourself too much to what you've done. Like, oh, well, I used to do this. Why am I not doing it now? Could be a myriad of reasons for that. But using those things of like, look how far you've come, and understanding that progress is not always linear. There are plateaus that happen. And we have to sometimes like figure out like what we need to do to work around those plateaus and stuff as well. Again, it could be life events that are affecting you. It could be school. It could be, an underlying illness that you haven't figured out or, diagnosed. Anemia is one of those things, especially for endurance athletes, that sometimes gets missed until you've done a lot of blood work and guessing and things like that. But I think that consistency piece is something that, I definitely have tried to, obviously integrate into my own life, but obviously the lives of the athletes that we work with here.
Obviously, consistency is an important theme for you. So I suspect we'll see that as we go along your career journey here. So you're in high school. We're still in high school here. You're having I really love, the third aspect that I thought you brought up in the original story was how you started running for other reasons, not your own. You talked about like, hey guys, do we really want to send Coach Hopkins out like this? Like, come on, we need to be a bright spot on his journey to retirement, not be this like, gosh, why did I have those kids? So I think that's another aspect of for kids is and for our own coaching, by the way, of doing it for others, doing it for another reasons. For coaching, I would hope that we are doing this profession for our families, our spouses, our children, our future families, et cetera, as well. So as you are in your senior year, and you sound like you have a pretty tight knit group of teammates there, and a great relationship with Coach Hopkins. What as you start looking to go into college, what were you looking for, and what were you thinking? We're 17, 18 years old at this time. It's crazy that we start picking like our life's journey at that age. I didn't know what I wanted to eat for breakfast the next day. How was I going to pick my career? What were you thinking for a major? Were you wanting to go to college to become a business owner, a doctor, what have you, a teacher? Who knows?
Yeah, no, it's funny. So when I was looking at schools, and this is still kind of semi pre-internet, or at least readily available internet, as it were, because this is like
what year did you graduate high school?
1995. So
okay,
spring.
so I graduated in 94. So I'm right with you. I know exactly where you're at.
So it wasn't like, you can just go online and search out schools. Like, honestly, outside of maybe a few of the SEC schools or schools in and around the state of Kentucky, like, a lot of things you don't, and honestly, I never heard of. It sounds funny to say this, but you're just not exposed to it back then. Like, I'd never heard of Division II or NAIA level and stuff. And I'd gotten, I wasn't that great of a student athlete in high school and stuff. And so I wasn't really getting contacted by a bunch of schools. And so I kind of was like, all right, well, I'm going to go to school for, I'm like most kids should, my major in academics and what I want to do and how I want to set up myself for a career. So I looked at like Western Kentucky and Morehead State, and ultimately settled on Murray State University in Murray, Kentucky. And so went there and was originally going to, and started, was going to be a history education major. I wanted to teach in high school and coach because I had such a great, it's kind of funny. I had such a great experience. I'm like, I want to stay involved in the sport. I want to, give back, to some degree, is kind of what I felt like I'd gotten out of the sport. And so, I got into doing that. And then it's
no worries. But this is just interesting because this is, there is no common path, by the way. We've done this 200 plus times. Everybody has a different way, but it is a little, I think it's still in the minority of a kid who is a teenager. Sounds like you had an idea, like I wanted to be a coach that young.
Yep.
Really? And why history? Were parents, teachers? Yeah.
Yeah. So I had some really good, history teachers and stuff. It's going to be funny. There's some reachbacks, but I remember Mr. Tabor in high school, and he was our kind of our like Western Civ, if you will, teacher and things like that. But he was a great teacher, and he always he did a great job of kind of just relating the information, making it exciting. And then Mr. Westerfield was our kind of government, professor or teacher and stuff as well. And he had he was very involved in local government and had a great way of just kind of getting us involved, and was very adamant about us getting registered to vote. And he didn't care about who you voted for. He just was, you got to do these things, and was, those are really good foundations and stuff. And my dad was, honestly enough, he was kind of a little bit of even though he only had high school education, he was very interested in history. So, we were always kind of watching, like PBS and kind of learning those kind of things and stuff, and always kind of getting me kind of, he was always kind of big into, it was kind of funny because we never really formally talked about it initially, but he loved like classic Greek mythology and things like that, and loved to read about it and stuff. And so, and it was funny because I remember taking a class, Miss Hart, I believe was the teacher for that, but she was, I guess it was I forgot what the name of the class actually was, like, but basically we studied like classic Greek mythology and stuff. And I remember bringing the book home one time, and I was at my dad's house that one weekend, and he's like, what the world? He's like, how, you're interested in this stuff too? I was like, yeah. So it's kind of funny. Cool. You get those shared passions and stuff. So I wanted to do that because I still to this day, I love, old architecture and learning, like I said, I'm a big fan of documentaries. So occasionally I will watch some really cool, I think they're really cool documentaries on just kind of, historical battles or historical, leaders and things of that nature and stuff. Cause it's interesting to learn, and same thing, even with running history and things like that. I love watching a lot of the, or reading about older coaches and stuff. I mean, I went on a search. I don't even know if I got the book here right now, but I've got an old book. It's an old Bill Dellinger book that he wrote way back. You can't even, I mean, it was a struggle to find this book. I went down a rabbit hole and I eventually found a copy that was for sale at some like library in, I think it was in Texas or something like that. But
Wow.
I love those kind of things and stuff. And so I thought, all right, I want to teach history, and then I can coach in high school. And I definitely think it's one of those things that would be rewarding for me and stuff as well.
Have
But
you have you seen the book? Just to draw this back in,
yeah.
because you like history. So I was looking at our history. So I don't know if you can see this so this is Track and Field Athletics for Coach and Contestant, written by Harry Gill. Back this version was 1925, but he's got we've got about 6 or 7 different copies around the building. He actually wrote, this is what they would teach in colleges and universities when they'd have a track and field class. Lo and behold, we used to have that. You'll have to look for, as a historian, you would like this.
We'll
find one on eBay every once in a while. But
I've got like the old Van Aken method book. I've got some. Thankfully, my wife actually found a couple of those because can't remember if that was a birthday or Father's Day gift several years ago. But I mean, I pour through some of those things. And I've got a friend of mine who's a team physician now at Georgetown. And he occasionally is like, oh, hey, I've got this book. And he sent me some books. I've got like Bill Squire's training book and things like that, gave me and stuff as well. And then I met Joe Vigil once. And I got a book from him, The Road to the Top and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so
but
you mentioned the way you stated it about, I believe you said at first when I would go to Mercer State, I wanted to be hit. So it doesn't sound like maybe that's how it panned out, which it rarely does, by the way, because again, we're talking about 17-year-olds here. So how did it go?
I took a few of the classes and I love the classes, but I think for me, I realized probably around sophomore year, and this is no disrespect to teachers, because they have a thankless job and it's a phenomenal job. And some of my best friends back in Augusta, and even obviously from Murray State days, are educators and teachers, and they do the Lord's work. But I think for me, and my own personal, I was like, I love learning about history too much to teach it, because then for me,
it's different.
I'm no longer learning about this stuff anymore. I'm teaching the same thing year after year after year. And so I was like, I don't want to lose the passion for learning about history and those sorts of things. So
I was going to say that passion's not always a career. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I remember talking to the coach at the distance coach at Murray State at the time was Pablo Sanchez. And I remember talking to him and he was like, you can be a college coach. And I was like, what? Like,
isn't that interesting? Yeah.
That's an occupation, because again, it's not one of those things like when you fill out the little career thing in high school about what I want to be. Right. That's not an occupation, because it's there. Like you were saying earlier, this is a weird profession that there's no like blueprint to how to get there. I mean, I've seen people from all different backgrounds, I mean, I've heard, like Mike Smith in Northern Arizona, I think he was an English major, okay, like, it's there, how you become a coach and get into collegiate coaching and there's so few jobs anyway. It's really tough. And so it was one of those things I was just like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I thought the only coaching opportunities would be in high school and stuff. And so
it always cracks me up when I hear that story. And that's a very common story. I like to talk about the idea of being a coach, less like a light switch and more like a fader, but it's always been in front of you. For those of us who participate in track and field, it's like, man, there's always been a guy or gal in front of us doing it, but we have never thought like, oh, well, then I can do that. Like, wait a minute, that could be a profession when the person's right in front of you doing it. It's like, oh, I never even thought about it. And you're right. If I want to be a teacher, I know, okay, I need to go to college. I need to study education. If I want to be a business owner, I either need to go to college and study business, or I need to start a business. We never think like, oh, okay, I'll be a track coach. So that means I need to do A, B, C, D. And it's like, nope, I mean, we've had people who were marketing majors. We've had people who didn't participate in track and field. Yeah. I'll go on to be really good track and field coaches, by the way. So I love that. It was kind of like this, like, wait a minute, wait, I can? Like, that can be me? I can be that profession?
Yeah, no, exactly. And so shortly after that, I remember going and talking to my advisor at the time, and I was like, I've got to change my major. I want to learn everything about how the human body works. And so we had, and it's called something different on every campus, or maybe now it's all more called kinesiology. But I went and studied exercise science. I was like, I just, I, you know, I, I didn't have a strong background in science and things like that, but it was one of those, I was like, that's what I've got to do, because I was like, I want to understand and learn everything I can about how the human body works, so that if I'm going to coach other people, I have a good firm foundation in that stuff. And I'm not saying that has to be the path for everyone, but it was my path and what I thought I needed to do. And I'm thankful I did it, because it did provide me with, I think, a really good understanding of what training concepts and things like that, but it also allowed me to understand when you read some of these different things and what coaches are talking about, or training articles and stuff, you understand what they're talking about. Because I remember the first time in my first couple classes in exercise science, they brought up some articles and stuff, and I'm reading through these articles going, this is a whole other language I don't understand yet. But in working with my advisor and things like that there, and just, more classes I got into, it just started to click. And I remember taking one class, biomechanics. They wanted you to have anatomy and physiology before you took this, but because of where I was so late in my career changing majors, I'm like, I don't, I couldn't get into anatomy and physiology for that semester. So I'm just going to take this class, and if they don't catch me without the prereq, then I'm okay. And I took the class, and we did a lot of, it was a lot of muscle stuff. So I had to do a lot of extra studying on top of that, just to make sure I knew what in the world I was talking about, because everyone else in the class had anatomy and physiology. And so they understood origins and insertions and things like that. And so, we're going through this class, and I remember Dr. Rice was the professor. And I remember halfway through the semester, she found out, she's like, wait a minute, I just realized you don't have the prerequisite. She's like, how are you doing so well in the class? I was like, because I'm studying a lot outside, but it's going to sound funny, and I don't mean to sound cliche, but like in the scene in Good Will Hunting, where Will is telling, they're like, well, how do you understand, chemistry? How do you understand this, math? How do you know? He's like, I just see it. And he's like, it's like, Mozart could sit down on the piano. He could just play.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm a brilliant by any stretch of the imagination, but all of it, for whatever reason, it just made sense.
Yeah. I think that's
there was a lot of extra work. Yeah. There's a lot of work that went into making it make sense. I had to do a lot of studying and really making sure I boned up on what the muscles were and things like that. Cause I had teach a lot of those things to myself, but it just made sense. I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, well, naturally it's here, and how things worked and stuff like that. And the way the body moved, I'm like, oh, okay. So it just kind of, I don't know, it was weird. I kind of just took to it. And it did make, when I did take anatomy and physiology, it actually made it a little easier, because I'm like, oh, well, this understands. And there were some other things and biological processes, you start learning about the Krebs cycle and all those things like that. You gotta bone up on those things. But it's, it was fascinating. And it was like, well, everything about this is new, and our understanding of the human body is constantly changing. So it's not like history is kind of stagnant. I mean, yes, there are some things that we learn, some new things, and new things come to light, but it is what it is to some extent. Whereas like with the human body, it's like, I remember learning still in the 90s, lactic acid is it's the marker of fatigue, and this is what's making you sore. Well, then you learn later on, like, no, that's not what it is. It's, again, not to get in the weeds in science, but it's a byproduct. You can actually resynthesize this. It's the hydrogen ions that make things. And I try not to bog down the athletes with the boring, coach science speak stuff. But those are the things that you learn, like those things are constantly changing. Our understanding of what the human body is even capable of. I mean, you go back to like when they thought, Roger Bannister, like your heart would explode if if someone broke 4 minutes in the mile. It's like, well, that's not even like, remotely possible and stuff like that. And so,
I don't know about that. That's actually my theory on all world records. I do believe, I always like to use the 100 as an example. I do believe that there is a time. Now it may be 8 seconds. It may be 7 seconds. I don't know. But I do think there is a limit to today's human body. Because again, we, who we are in 2024 is different than we were in 1914, right?
Oh, yeah.
They were smoking cigarettes before they did the 100-meter dash in 1914. We've at least learned not to do that. But I do believe there's a time, let's just say it's 8 seconds, that when a guy or gal crosses that line at 8 seconds, their heart does, like, that's literally how I used to explain. I go, and their heart will just explode. Like the whole body will just be like, oh, I'm just
Oh
disintegrated.
yeah.
So I do think that's true. 4 minutes in the mile was not it though.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. No, I definitely think like there are things. I mean, because everything you even think like in like an event like the pole vault, like we're at a limit where like it's more the equipment
I
is
was gonna
really
say there's technology in the
there's
equipment side on that.
technological like,
Yeah,
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 technological
yeah.
things that are going to be the limit of some of
Yeah,
these things
yeah.
too.
There'll
Or
be some human improvement as far as the pole vaulter themselves, but it's going to be equipment on that one. But when you get
yeah,
down
no,
to
no, for
the
sure.
raw,
That's exactly right. Yeah,
yeah,
no,
when
but
you
I
get
mean,
down
there
to the
gotta
raw
be
running
limits.
though, yeah,
Oh yeah,
the running is where I certainly think our fusion blocks are the best blocks in the world. But I don't know that there's something else to be done with the blocks that the human body getting better at acceleration and max velocity and decelerating less, even more or less.
yeah.
That'll be the real, how we
Oh yeah.
like 958 and 94, 93 and things like that.
Yeah, no, I
So
mean, it's insane to think about some of the things that, I mean, even like in the shot put and stuff like that, that those folks are throwing
yeah,
things
yeah.
as far as they are. Like, that's just crazy.
So you end up getting an exercise physiology major
Yep.
and have a new um target for a professional career of like, oh, okay, I'm actually going to coach college track. I'm not going to be a high school teacher coaching high school track. I'm going to go to college. So what was the first, you get a degree, assume you get a degree.
Yep.
What's the first step to becoming a coach for you?
Yeah. So I volunteered at Murray State University, worked with Coach Pablo Sanchez there, and just kind of honestly just shadowed him for the most part. It was just a little, like, unpaid, you know, um, you know, um, assistant, if you will, and just kind of learned and watched, and I mean, for good or bad, and I think that's the one thing I tell athletes, that are considering coaching now is like, there are going to be things that I do well that you're going to be like, I kind of want to copy that. I'm like, then there are going to be things I don't do very well at all that you're going to be like, okay, I learned his lesson. Let me not do that or not repeat that. And I'm like, so that's fine. There are things that Coach Hopkins did really well and things that he didn't do so well that I learned from and applied that to my own, kind of like, okay, I need to remember this for, why I become a coach. Same thing with Pablo. There were some things he did really well, some things he didn't do really well. And I think, and then the same thing we all are going to make, even if you learn those lessons by watching other people, you still make mistakes when you're a coach. And and then I think that's part of coaching is making those mistakes and learning along the way. I think it's, obviously trying to minimize those things because you are working with human beings and their careers and their lives and things like that too. So you have to be, a good steward of the talent and the people that you're being entrusted with. But yeah, no, I think so. I volunteered there and then decided, what, I want to go to grad school because, almost talking to Pablo, and of course he talked about like kind of what his path was. I'm like, well, he got his master's degree. I need to probably go get a master's degree. So I, in a hodgepodge kind of way, I went to the University of Memphis for a semester. And if it hadn't been for the fact that it was an expensive place to live, especially when you're only getting a GA stipend, and not making a lot of money and things like that. And so I'm like, all right, went back home, worked for a little bit, and eventually moved down to Augusta, Georgia, which is where my wife was. We had met in college. She was a collegiate rower. And so we moved down there and was working. And then I got, the wild hair. I was like, I kind of want to get back into this coaching thing. Like, there's got to be some way, I'm not that far removed. There's got to be some way I can work. And there's like, 2 local colleges there that are 3 technically, Payne College, Augusta, and then Aiken, University of USC Aiken's not that far either. I was reaching out to those places to see who had an opportunity. And I got in touch with the coach eventually at the time at Augusta State University and said, look, my background's in running. I'd love to help if I can. And they kind of cobbled the team together. Buck Harris was the coach there. He was the assistant men's basketball coach. He was head cross country coach. They only had a women's program, but they had I think 3 of the athletes were women's basketball players. Another 2 or 3 were women's softball players and things like that. And so I'm like, look, let me help. They never practiced. They just showed up to meets and competed, which is, wild to me, but that's all they did and stuff. And they just did it for some extra scholarship money and things like that. So I came in and they said, well, we can't practice in the afternoons because we have other sport practices. I was like, okay, well, when can you guys practice? And I think they thought I was joking when they were, and so they, they're, oh, okay, well, we can practice in the mornings before like 6:30. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm like, so we met at 5:30 in the morning. I wouldn't advise that normally, but it was like the only time. And they were like, okay, gosh, so we met at 5:30 and all we literally did was we just ran. We did, because they weren't running before. And I was like, okay, well, they're already doing a lot of other short sprinting stuff in softball, short sprinting stuff in basketball. So I don't really need to add a lot of workout stuff. We just need to build up a foundation. And so, they got better, obviously just because they were just running, it was like almost like a couch to 5K type thing, basically.
Yeah.
They got better. We still finished dead last in the conference, but I like to think, and I joke, I think it was that same year, the women's basketball team had one of their best seasons. I'm like, all right, you're welcome. Your athletes were in super shape. Women's softball, I think, had a pretty good season too. And had nothing to do with us, but I joked with both the coaches at the time. I'm like, they're super fit. So, therefore you guys could, do the things you want to do. The valuable lesson I learned in that was, you don't always have to do all the big fancy workouts and all this kind of stuff to see improvement in athletes. So it's like you coach the kids where they are, not where you want them to be sometimes. And I think that's important. But then right after that, so I volunteered there for that year. The next year, the head men's basketball coach left, and Buck had applied for that job to be the new head coach at Augusta State. He was passed over for that job. And so he's like, you know what, I'm going to leave. And he said, look, if I'll put in a good word for you, if you want to do this job, he's like, I can't promise you they're going to pay you much or what they're going to do with the program. He's like, but I'll put in a good word for you. He's like, because, Buck and I got along really well. And every time I occasionally see him to this day and stuff like that, it's just like, oh my gosh, like, no time has passed or whatever. But, fast forward, I emailed the AD, Clint Bryant, multiple times. And I think he just got so tired of me pestering him that he finally kind of gave me like an unofficial interview and just said, all right, well, tell me about what, why you should be good for this job. Like, why should I hire you and stuff? And so we talked about it. And I was like, look, one, you haven't really done much with the program before. You guys have been dead last. I can't do any worse than what you've been doing. So
it's always a good selling point.
I'm like, so like, if I'm terrible, you're not going to know, but then like, you can always just, get rid of me after a year if you don't like the way things are moving and stuff, and I was willing to take the job for, I made $5,500, not 55,000, $5,500 for the year, but I was willing to do it because I believed in myself and I believed in what I thought I could do as a coach and what we could do with the program, given some time and some resources. And they did. They put a little bit more money into the program, not a significant amount, but a little bit more money into the travel budget, a little bit more money into the scholarship budget. It was just a women's only program. And I was like, look, let me recruit some real runners and, and we go from there. And so I recruited 2 runners. That's what we were able to do. So recruited 2 local girls and kind of built it from there.
Let's pause there and we'll pick back up there. But there's 2 questions I want to go back to. One is, you said your wife was a rower in college. Today in 2024, if someone were to tell me, hey, I'm a rower, my spouse is a rower, I'd be like, wow, that's kind of rare. There's still not a billion programs. This is back in the, we're in the late 90s, mid to late 90s at this point, super rare. And I have to think, for an exercise phys guy, like rowing is another very track component-esque, like training component. You talk about strength, you talk about endurance, you also talk about fast twitch. I'm going to say this in probably a not great way. Did you experiment? Did you experiment on your wife? What I mean by that is, like, did you use her, training of like, hey, you guys should do this, or hey, wait a minute, you guys are doing that, maybe I should do that on the track. I just feel like there's some complementary there.
Yeah, no, honestly, not really, because rowing was one of those things where, like, it was at Murray State, it was a sport they kind of started because they were trying to obviously increase for Title IX purposes, increase a lot of, because I don't know, again, the background on this exactly, but it's a weird, like the late 90s and early 2000s, there was an explosion of adding a lot more women's sports. I don't know if it was more because Title IX was maybe being more enforced then than it had been the previous 20 years before when it was started, but there was a big explosion across a lot of campuses, and ours was one because I remember we had women's soccer, we had women's rowing. I feel like there was another sport that we added that was a women's sport that was new at Murray, and so my wife had rowed. She did crew in high school. That wasn't like a high school team.
Wow.
Like her high school did. It was more of like an all-star, kind of like almost like a club level sport. But it was
but down in Augusta, you said she's from
Augusta,
Georgia.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I would have thought if you would have told me that and I didn't know Georgia, I said, oh, she grew up in the Northeast.
Yeah, no. So Augusta,
Interesting.
so this is what's funny. So Augusta, Georgia used to be a training facility for the U.S. national team.
I think I
for
knew
rowing.
that.
Yeah. And so rowing's actually kind of big. The water is really calm. It's got a good current. It's kind of funny, but yeah, no, Augusta used to be. So if you ever go on a boat ride down the Savannah River, you will see where UPenn or I think even Tennessee or other collegiate programs, they've spray painted underneath the old bridges and overpasses their little it's like good graffiti if you want to call it that, but it's
that's the first thing I thought of. I was like, well, they just tagged. They tagged.
Yeah, basically they just tag. Yeah, but it's like you'll take a boat under there and you'll see collegiate rowing teams have got their boats there and they've spray painted their artistically done, mind you, their school logos or whatever. I'm like, how this is impressive. Or they've done it really well. But yeah, no, it's a great place to go. It's cool because like you'll see like the little foggy, smoky looking mornings and you'll see collegiate rowers and they're just out there and you'll just hear them off in the distance.
Cool.
It's really cool. But yeah, no, so never really did that with her. I was also fascinated. So I would always ask her about like what their training was like, because they would go on training runs and things like that, or they would do ergs, which is essentially like their kind of like time trials and stuff. They would do ergs at least once a week and things like that. And so like, that's how they chose, who was going to be in the what boat, the 8 or, the singles and things like that. And so, she could definitely go into more of the science and the background of what the whole rowing aspect of it was. But yeah, these, she would do those kind of things. So I was always fascinated, like, okay, they would talk about, the distances they would row, 2K, 3K, things like that and stuff. I'm like, okay. And, you're trying to equate that, like, okay, how does that equate to, same thing in like swimming, if someone does like the 1500 in the pool, that's really almost more like to like the 5K or the 10K. Right. Whereas obviously the 50 that's your sprinters, and stuff. And then, your intermediates in the middle and things like that and stuff. And so like, you kind of have to figure out like how to equate those things. But no, it was fascinating to learn, kind of how they trained for those things. Cause they would do a lot of what like swimming would call dry land training, and things like that. But then, they would do some things where they had a boat set up in the indoor pool, over at, the Car Health building and stuff. And so they would, get in there and they would do some, things there. We didn't really have a great rowing setup at Murray State because they'd have to go out to like Kentucky Lake or Lake Barkley, which is, I think it was like at least a 30-minute drive, if not further. So they'd have to get up early in the morning and go do that. And it's choppy lake water. It wasn't even smooth. So it wasn't a great place. And they were obviously always having to go up to like, New England, Boston, like the head of the Charles, things like that and stuff too. So she did those things in high school and things like that. And it's an expensive sport because those boats are really not cheap. And you can't fly a boat. So someone's got to drive the boat up there. So it's it's an interesting niche kind of sport and stuff. But yeah, so no, that was, it was funny. If anything, nurse in nursing student, so she went to school for nursing. If anything, I was always kind of her guinea pig, and when she was like listening for heart rates, or she would try to like look to see if she could find a vein. Thankfully, I never let her stick me with anything, but I hate needles. But it's one of those things where she's much more of a track and field and avid fan of that sport now. Just I think she was jumping up off the couch on Sunday when the women's 1500 going nuts, and I'm going, oh my God, I'm over here going, calm down. But she gets really excited and into the sport and stuff now. I think cool. I've kind of pulled her more to our side of things than the other way around and stuff. But yeah,
that's cool. I love hearing about the boats. Finally, we found a sport harder than pole vaulting to travel around.
Oh yeah, no, sure.
So the second question that I had, it sounds like you got out of you were still very early in the profession, but you got out of the profession for some time before you started working for Augusta, volunteering, and then making that whopping 5,500 a year.
Yeah.
What brought you back? So you were doing other jobs. You're a smart guy. Anybody who gets an exercise phys degree, you're a smart dude. So, and there's other things you can do with those type of degrees. What brought you back to coaching track and field versus, I always say, I like to joke a lot when a young person comes in and says, yeah, I'm a coach, it's my first year. And I'm like, oh, what was your major? And they'll tell me something like exercise phys, or, I've had kids tell me, kids, 23, 24-year-old rookie coaches tell me, I was a biomechanics or an engineer. And I'm like, you seem too smart to be a track. Like, there's other things you could be doing.
Exactly.
Why are you doing this for 5,500? You could have done a lot of other things. Why? What brought you back to coaching?
Yeah. So it's funny. So I actually, in between, I did work at a hospital-owned health and fitness facility. We were they were called, I think fitness specialists is actually what we're called. So essentially we're kind of like personal trainers, but we didn't have to rely on I got paid a nice base salary. I was making really good money.
More than 5,500.
Exactly. I could have moved up. I was back in my hometown and things like that. And it was it definitely had like a good path for advancement and stuff. And so, we worked, honestly, a lot of times too, we would work with patients that got released from physical therapy. We would continue a lot of their care and stuff. And so it was a really fun and rewarding job. I remember applying to even GA positions. I even looked at some volunteer positions that got posted. So like, obviously by this point, this is like 2002, 2003. And so I looked at like, okay, well, the internet is, you can, look up things. It's a lot easier to kind of find out what jobs are even available and out there now. And I would see like, oh, there's a volunteer position at this school, whatever. It's really tough sometimes, if I'm going to be honest. The one bad thing about our sport is, and coaching as a profession, I should say, not the sport, but the one bad thing about coaching as a profession is if you don't, it's not as much of a meritocracy as we would like it to be. It is a lot. It is definitely one of the few professions that still is. It is a little bit of who you kind of know. And so it was like, oh, well, if you wanted to be a D1 volunteer, you kind of either had to come from that program or you had to be recommended by Mike Cunningham, who's at, University of Alabama, or, whatever the case may be. You kind of had to kind of be already kind of plugged in. I was like, well, that wasn't who I was or my background. And I didn't have any of those big fancy connections. So I'm like, I'm going to have to just kind of create my own opportunity if one doesn't just present itself and come to me, or I'm allowed to kind of even interview for some of these things. And I didn't have a lot of, flashy experience and stuff. I'd volunteered at my alma mater and things like that for the most part stuff. And so when this position eventually became available at Augusta University, because I was moving down there and I picked up another job kind of in the fitness industry down there. And that wasn't really it wasn't even the same as what I'd had. And it wasn't really as rewarding. It just wasn't as fun. This happened. And I'm like, if another opportunity like this may never come along again, I've got to take a chance on myself. I got to gamble. And if it doesn't pan out, I can always go back if I really need to, and I can try to find something else in this industry. Or, you know what, I'm resourceful enough. I believe in myself. I can kind of find something in another area if I really need to and stuff. And I did work a few other little odd jobs because, no offense, you're not, my wife and I we hadn't got married just yet at that time. I was actually getting married while I was volunteering at Augusta State. And, I know she probably thought I was nuts then, but she trusted me. And so I did this. I worked a couple of odd jobs, retail. I even did like a little sales associate job, like for like a MRI company at one point. But it was all really just in service of trying to become a coach and stuff. And I've talked to other coaches done similar things, like, they bartended, they did this, they did that, did all kinds of odd jobs to make their ultimate dream of what they wanted to do come to fruition and stuff. And so I did those things. I stuck with it. I got a whopping raise after I think it was either a year or two. I went from 5,500 to 8,500. Did that for another year and then eventually got brought on full time. So I think it was like my third year in. I became full-time. So in 2007 is when I became a full-time head coach for just women's cross country only. Still didn't make a ton of money, but I was full-time, benefits, the whole thing, which was nice and stuff like that. And so, yeah, but I mean, that was getting back into it was just more of like, this is what I want to do. I just had this, it sounds very cliche and silly to say it this way, but I just had this calling of like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. And it's funny now I look back on it, I'm like, I don't even know what I would do now with the rest of my, if I hadn't got into coaching, what I'm sure I would have found something, but you do something for so long, you're kind of like, man, like, I don't know what I would be doing now and things like that. But yeah, no, I definitely think it was just the opportunity, this kind of, the stars aligned, if you will, that I was able to kind of take advantage of that opportunity. And Clint Bryant, the AD at the time, gave me the opportunity and took a chance on a young man who didn't have a ton of experience. And, he allowed me to kind of chart my own path.
What were you doing differently that you obviously proved something to them? You go from like, hey, we kind of suck now, so I can't do any worse. And so you go
Yeah,
from volunteer to 5,500, 8,500. I can't imagine, that must've been an amazing Christmas. You were swimming in the money then at that point.
exactly.
And then they move you into a full-time position. I mean, so you're earning trust, and I'm
Yep.
assuming showing results as well. And results are in a lot of different ways, right? You mentioned being last in conference. You may have moved up to third, fourth, fifth. I don't know, but also success could have been like, yeah, we went from a roster of, hodgepodge 6, 7 softball player, basketball players, et cetera, to, oh, now we have a roster of 10, like full-time cross-country distance runners. What were you doing to earn these, raises and full-time positions versus part-time positions?
Yeah, no. So, so the fall of 2004 was I was essentially, um, the head coach, but I was getting paid essentially like a GA stipend, and they paid for me to finish up my master's degree there at a.
Oh, you did? Yeah. What did you get that in? Did you get that in exercise?
I tried to do. They didn't really have a lot of options. It was like you either got a master, an MBA. There's like a handful. I'm trying to remember what the other ones were, but I did an MED, so Master's of Education in Physical Education and Physical and Health Education.
Oh, yeah.
They had two tracks with that. They had a non-teaching track where you wrote a thesis and all that kind of stuff, or you did a teaching track where you kind of did more of like a pedagogical, analysis, and you kind of had to do some teaching, some classroom time. And I was like, let's do this non-teaching track and things like that. Again, nothing against the teachers out there, but I just knew that I didn't really want to go that route because the thesis side, because then I was like, oh, I created
which that's so funny, by the way, because, spoiler alert, you became a full-time, this is your career now, coach, which it literally is no different than what a teacher does. And what I mean by that is, you're teaching, I'm gonna say, quote unquote, the same things every year. Obviously you may tweak some things here and there, but you're teaching the same basic fundamentals to new kids every year. Your classroom just happens to be on an oval versus inside four walls. So it's just funny to me, like, because I see what you're saying. I know exactly.
The irony's not lost. The irony's not lost on that. But I think the thing with coaching is, and I think every coach would say this, is even though, yes, we're doing a lot of the same things, I mean, the problems and the solutions and the weather and the recruiting and financial and budget things, like it's a completely different task every single time. I mean, the equation that you had to work with last year, like if you had you had 5 women and you went to nationals, you placed top 5, but you graduate 3 of those. It's like, well, you don't just plug and play necessarily. I mean, you can if you get lucky in the transfer portal.
I'm not sure it's as different as we think. Pure speculation, by the way. My wife's not a teacher. She's actually a long-term sub, so there, I have some, but I think about teachers. But I think that the more the difference is, as coach, we're going to be graded by, we got second place, first place, seventh place, et cetera, or this many kids went to nationals or not, where a teacher gets, maybe in today's society, they unfortunately get graded on what's the class, get their grades in. So there's some things that have to go there, but I find the irony of like, oh no, I think, like, to me, it's actually a huge compliment when I say, hey coach, you are a teacher. You're just teaching distance running or jumping versus math or English or whatnot. So it's just funny that you're like, oh, I don't want to go that teacher route. And I'm like, yeah, bro, you're a
Well,
teacher.
yeah, no, it is. You are, yeah, no, you are 100% correct. And it is funny because, like, in my mind, I was thinking, oh, I'm getting away from teaching and stuff. And it's like you find yourself and you start thinking about, you're like, I mean, when you write out training plans, what is that more than just it's a lesson plan? I mean, when you're
Yep.
looking at, you know, your student athletes are your students, if you will, and you are trying to educate and teach them and nurture them and things along the way. And so, yeah, no, definitely for sure. Yeah, no, so yeah,
keep us going. Yeah, keep us through Augusta, and then so how and why do we leave Augusta? Your wife is from there. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. Like, I'm a little surprised actually that you're not still there.
Yeah, so kind of like going back to even like the results piece. So like we finished dead last in 2004. The next year in 05 we finished sixth. The next year in 2007 we were third, and this is in the conference. Excuse me. We're in the conference. We finished third. So in 3 years we went from dead last to third. The next year in 2008, that was kind of the year that kind of put us, at least in my opinion, kind of put us on the map in terms of what we were going to eventually do and become. 2008, we finished second in the conference, 4 points, I believe it was, out of first place. A little bit of a heartbreaking loss. It was tough. I know myself and the ladies, we took that personally, but I learned a lot about, like, look, if I remember telling the ladies, pull them aside. I had tears in my eyes, but I said, look, we can either let this hold us back, or we have 2 weeks to get ready for regionals, and we can come back and we can see, the team that beat us, we can see them in 2 weeks, and we could try to make a run to try to make nationals. And then they're just like, their eyes are just like, oh, wow, like, okay, like, this is what we got to do. 2 weeks later, we finished second in the region. And this is back before they had, like, this is the old D2 system was like, if, there were only 24 teams that made it. And it had to be, the old system was like, you only got extra bids to your region if a team from your region finished in the top 8 at the last year's national championship. So it was like the crazy formula and stuff like that. So it's, it was hard. So, like, our region was not that great. So you only got 2 chances to make nationals. We finished second in the region, and we were in a fairly new region, the Southeast. We used to be in the South with, like, Alabama, Huntsville, and all those kind of schools like that. So we finished second in the region with the nationals. Our reward was running in the snow at Cooper Lake Campground in just north of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I had women who had never seen snow because they're from the South. I had 2 women who'd never been on a flight before. Wow. So it was wild.
That's
but, like,
amazing. I think I just want to stress that, for you personally in this story and other coaches listening, that when I talk about the positive impact you make on young people and what this sport does for them, here are people that are getting to experience snow for the first time, which is, it is comical for us who have lived in snow areas and vice versa, but also their first, like, if you didn't recruit that young lady to the team and got, and worked together and got them so good that they made it to nationals, who knows when she would have gotten on a plane. I mean, those are life experiences.
Because it's 2008, you feel like, oh, everyone's probably flown at some point by, yeah. I mean, no, it's crazy because, and I can relate to her a little bit because it was funny because she was from Little Rockmart, Georgia, and she would always say that. She's like, I'm just a little girl from Rockmart, Georgia. And so it was funny because that being her first flight, I remember I was in college the first time I flew on a plane. And remembering, like, wow, I remember sitting there and you're just kind of holding on, like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Because you've never experienced it before. And it was funny because, like, once she had done it, like, you could definitely tell she's like, okay, this is a cool experience, a little nerve wracking at first, but I'm sure, and I don't know if Lindsay, that was her name. I don't know. Hopefully she's taken many more flights since then, like that. But yeah, I think it's definitely neat to kind of be there to help athletes with some of those opportunities.
When you got second at regionals, did you beat the team that beat you at conference?
Yes,
nice.
We did. We beat the team. Yeah, we beat them. Awesome. Yeah, because they were picked to be the number 2 team, or maybe not possibly number 1. So we beat them at regionals, which was nice. So we kind of got a little revenge, if you will. And I remember telling the ladies afterwards, I'm like, yeah, they can keep the conference trophy. They can't take this away from you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to go to nationals. This is something that you're going to remember for the rest of your life. And they bring up, I've got a young lady in our team was from France that year. And we still talk to each other and things like that from time to time. And I remember, Sophie will bring up kind of on the anniversary thing. She's like, I remember we had icicles on our eyelashes. We were so cold previewing the course. They had marked the course in white. So guess what? There was already snow on the ground. So, they had to plow. They took it was like an old Chevy S10, had a plow on the front of it. They plow the whole course for the race. And we were the only team. And I feel bad because this is a rookie coaching mistake. I didn't know these things at the time. But we got on the line. Our ladies are looking at everyone else, like Adams State and even teams from the South and stuff that were there. Like I remember Huntsville being there and stuff. They're just wearing their singlets, maybe some ear warmers, some gloves, maybe some long socks. That's it. They just had their singlets and their shorts on. We were singlets, but we had long sleeve thermal stuff underneath. We had long sleeve tights underneath our women were toasty, but we overheated. We were
sure.
Yeah. I mean, that was the thing, is like, we thought we were going to be fine. We got halfway through the race and they were just like, and we finished last, but I was like, look, we're last at nationals. I would rather be last at nationals than sitting at home watching other people.
As I'll say, there are more teams wishing they were there to be last. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
right.
It was a phenomenal experience. So
you said this kind of put us on the map in relation to like this moves us to Maine. So keep moving.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So, we added a men's team a couple of years later. The men's team finished 5th at conference that first year as a men's team, which is pretty solid with a bunch of freshmen and like 2 sophomores. The next year we won the conference championship. The women were second that year. They were second the year before. I think we were second at Augusta University with women's team more times than I can count. The men's team in my tenure there went on to win. I think we won 6 conference championships from 2010 to 2021 because I wasn't there in fall of 22. We finished 9th in the nation in 2019 with just a handful of boys from Georgia. A couple of them were transferred. They were originally from Georgia. Like one guy he'd gone to Campbell. He transferred as a grad student. We had another guy that was at Kennesaw State, and he transferred in as kind of almost like a 5th year grad. Was he grad? No, I can't remember if Chase was grad at that point, if he was just still an undergrad. But we went up there, and I remember we just told him, I was like, look, there's nothing we can't do together. And I remember we just said we got to be patient. They were 26 at the mile on the little split. But every marker, they were moving up. They were moving up. They were moving up. And I remember talking to the guys afterwards, and they were like, Coach, the race went out. I was in 150th place, and I almost ran my high school PR in the 1600 for the first mile of the race and stuff. And so when we finished 9th, I tell people this, and again, it sounds funny and cliche. I felt a little bit like Jim Valvano when they won the national championship. I'm running around looking for someone on the team. I can't find anybody. I'm just trying to find someone to hug at this point and stuff like that, because we just accomplished something that had never been done in school history. I mean, we finished 9th in the region. We were right behind Queens, who had been a kind of a distance power in the region, things like that and stuff. We had a young lady who qualified. She was only like our second or third ever individual qualifier, third individual qualifier ever. And she finished 44th, highest finish by male or female and stuff like that. It's like, it was just a phenomenal day for us. Very cool. I really think if, unfortunately for probably a lot of people could say this, if we had not had the COVID interruption the following year, we were bringing all those people back. And so I'm like, with the exception of, even our grad student, I think was coming back. So I was like, we probably, who knows what would have happened, and again, you can't dwell on things that, woulda, shoulda, coulda stuff, but like, we came back that COVID season, we actually got a chance to have another conference championship. We won the conference championship again. The following year, we perfect scored the conference championship. We had in 2021, we went 1 through 8, I think was what it was. And then we had 10 of the top 15 or 9 of the top 15 or something like that, in our conference. And then, we definitely
change from having basketball and softball kids just run out of meet to get meets in and get an extra book scholarship or whatnot.
Wow. We started outdoor track. We didn't have indoor. We started outdoor track in 2013. That first season, I had a guy qualify for the 1500, And it was really kind of cool. He was from Rifle, Colorado, out on like the back range. What we'd call like a small town kid. Pueblo, Colorado, CSU Pueblo was hosting that year in 2013. He got to go and run, his last and only, championship opportunity in Colorado. Mom and dad got to drive over. It was kind of nice and things like that. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So we had some really kind of speckled success with things like that. And we had a lot of really good, individuals across, multis and things like that over the years and stuff. And so we had a lot of conference champions and, never honestly in that setting, in that school being, conference was kind of our big thing. Making it to nationals was, something we wanted to do, but we just didn't have the ability to kind of really, I think, to do a lot of the bigger things we'd like to, because we had to develop a lot of kids. And by the time they got really good, it's like, if you had one more year, it'd been great. We just didn't have the ability financially to obviously just redshirt a bunch of kids all the time and stuff too. And a lot of our kids were more like, I got to get in school for 4 years and get out and, and get on with things. They weren't thinking about track and field as a long-term kind of career kind of thing. And so, fast forward to, obviously what kind of brought me to Maine, I think, after 2021 and just kind of looking, I've been trying for years to get a track and field facility built at Augusta University, and we just kind of was not met with a lot of, help in that area, or a lot of, hey, let's look and see what we can do, and try to do some things even within the community to try to get them on board. And there was maybe some flickers here and there, but no one that really wanted to kind of speak up and help me, kind of move the program forward. And so I was like, you know what, I've been here for a long time. We've, accomplished a lot of the things I think we can kind of do right now under what my vision and leadership was. And I'm like, maybe it's time to look and see what else is out there and available. And so this opportunity at Maine came available. I did some research. I thought, oh, well, they've already got a track. They've already got an indoor track, but they have resources already in place. They're looking to build other new facilities. So I'm like, they've already got some. They're looking to build new. This is something at least is intriguing. They have, if people really look, the history of Maine they've got a deep, rich history of athletes across a multitude of different sports.
Right.
I believe it was the 1915, 16, or 17. I forget. I should know this because I accepted the Hall of Fame award for them. But they won the IC4. This is before NCAA. They won the IC4A national championship in cross country on the men's side. They've had phenomenal athletes compete in NCAA's Olympic trials, things of that nature and stuff too. They had a 1936 Berlin Olympian, and I believe it was the javelin. Derek Treadwell in the 1500. Jessie Lebrecht she was on the American Ninja Warrior, but she was also an NCAA caliber athlete and competed at nationals, if I'm not mistaken, as well. A ton of just phenomenal athletes that too many to name at this point and stuff. And so I was like, wow, like they've got, a really rich history here. It's at least worth taking a look into. And so I remember, applying for the job. I got contacted by Samantha Hegman-Wary, who is the compliance director here. And she just called me and she's like, look, I just want to be honest up front and let you know, like, it's not fully funded. It's, this is what you're getting yourself into. And I'm like, but there's still so many things you guys already have that I don't have here. I'm interested. So, we talked some more, and then obviously one thing led to another. We came up and visited, and I was like, it's going to sound funny. When my wife and I visited, the first thing we both said was, this is so much like the college we went to. I mean, there's so many things that are similar. Murray State's got the big M on buildings. They got a big M when you drive up here. It's Murray State's, Murray, Kentucky is a smaller town. It's lots of, lakes and hiking and things like that are surrounding that and stuff too. Orono and Bangor, those kind of areas. It's very similar. The campus of University of Maine it's just so many things felt like, wow, this feels like our college experience and stuff. And so those things felt really cool. I met, I'll tell you, he's got to be a phenomenal recruiter, and because he definitely kind of helped sell my wife and I as the soccer coach who's next door to me, Scott Atherley. He was one of the first coaches I met with, and we went out to, dinner with his wife, and he's just got kind of a very calm and soothing demeanor. As a coach, he's a little more fiery and things like that, but he's just got that, I don't know, that essence as a coach. You're just like, all right, I could see why athletes are just like, I'll run through a brick wall for this guy, because he's just got that very kind of just very laid back, but kind of commanding presence. Like he's almost like not his voice, but like his presence. I always tell people it's like people like would love to hear Morgan Freeman read something, yes, for his voice, but because Morgan Freeman has that kind of just that presence, that aura of just like, I could just listen, read the dictionary and things like that. Scott's kind of got that same thing, but he's also a good kind of a mentor as well. And he's someone I definitely look up to and talk to and things like that. And even though he's not in our sport, he's definitely someone I'll go and pop in his office every once in a while and just be like, hey, how would you handle and deal with this situation? Or here's what I'm thinking, or we're both kind of going through, we're building new facilities and we've kind of been bouncing ideas off of each other, kind of what we want and things that kind of are priorities for us and stuff as well. But him and his wife, they kind of, and he showed me kind of around the trails we have some beautiful trails right on the backside of campus. And I was like, we've got too many reasons not to succeed here. We've got more reasons to be good than we do to fail. So it's like, all right. And I told them, like, after my wife was happy, that was the other thing too. If my wife she's got to be on board with this as well. Cause it's not just me that's coming up here. It's my wife and my kids and they were in high school both at the time. So it's like, we're kind of uprooting and changing their lives at a very critical point. So we had to kind of make sure they were kind of okay with some things as well. But yeah, once we made that change and made that decision, it's been phenomenal. Not without its challenges and setbacks and things like that, but because anytime you uproot your life to an area of the country we'd never been to before, there are always going to be some little hiccups and things like that. But I think we've seen some solid success in a short period of time here, and looking forward to even more success, obviously, as time goes on.
College recruiting, including track and field recruiting, so athlete to school, is very similar to private sector recruiting for hiring jobs. And here we're specifically talking about, a coaching job. If I ever did an athlete podcast, I would focus on the recruiting side of like, hey, so when you went to this school, you were sold this bill of goods, and then you got there, what was reality? And sometimes, and I think probably most of the time, the bill of goods are the same. I kind of think of like, here recently, there was a tweet or an Instagram, the University of Texas for football. Their recruits they lined up all these like Porsches or Bugattis or whatever, all these fancy cars, and the football recruits had to walk by. And, there's an inference of like, hey, we have these cars, or you could have these cars, there's an inference. And then reality sets in, they go to school. There's no way those kids are driving Bugattis or whatever and all that kind of stuff, right? So you go through the recruiting process for the job, and we'd like to think that we're all trying to be our genuine self, that you would feel comfortable as the interviewee of expressing like, yeah, well, that doesn't sound like something I would be into. It's like, how serious is that part of the job? And you would hope that your interviewer is being as honest as possible, saying, hey, you know what? It's beautiful here, but it sucks. It does get to -10 and 100 inches of snow or whatever. Those rarely do actually come up during the interview process, because we want to be this very kumbaya we're recruiting. So you went through the recruiting process as for the job, and now you've been there for a couple of years. You're in reality. How is it panning out for you and wife and family?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that was the one thing that was great, is they were upfront and honest about that. I'd asked a couple other friends who went to cold weather schools, and I was like, look, I'm going to be trying to learn how to I'm used to training athletes when it's hot and humid. We really don't get that kind of bad weather. We can train outside year round. We don't. Indoor is something that's like a luxury to do in the South. It's not a requirement and stuff like that. So, so I think initially, for me, it was just like, all right, well, how do we adjust to training on an indoor track? Because there's some considerations. You can't, if you're just constantly doing everything around a short, tight loop all the time, you're going to create more problems and injuries, things like that. And so what do we need to do? How can we, mix things up, spice things up with that area and stuff? Helping our kids get integrated into the schools. And, I think that was one of the things when the kids came up, I'd already, we'd accepted a job and we said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to let the kids go to school through the fall semester. I'm going to be here working. So we did have some time apart there, but we brought both the kids up and we let them say, look, where we live is going to be largely dictated on what school you want to go to. So we let them tour schools. There are several great schools in the area. We let them tour the schools and let them have a little bit of say in that, because I felt like we were taking so much away from them in terms of their autonomy. And I think that's one of the things that when you're that age, you don't have as much autonomy, as you would like anyway, because that's what, part of growing up is you learn like, all right, my parents are kind of controlling everything for the most part. And so we wanted to give them a little something. And so we toured the schools and ultimately they settled on Bangor High School. And that was a phenomenal fit for them and what they wanted to do. And we couldn't be more happy about the results of that. My son graduated just recently and he's going to come to University of Maine and study electrical engineering here, which is really cool. And our daughter's got a couple more years and she's got other plans for where she wants to go to school, but that's fine, I think they've settled in well. And I think they enjoy the life that they've got here and things. I mean, granted, they're young. I feel the same way. They miss their friends that they grew up with and they know, and they spent a ton of time with in their formative years and stuff, but they've done a really good job of adapting here. My wife has got a really good core group of women she works with and folks outside. She's got a little running group that she meets with and hangs out with them and stuff as well. And so it's really been great for them to get integrated and things like that in the community. And I'll be honest, the folks from Maine have been amazing and true blue from the beginning. And they've been super helpful. I mean, we didn't know anybody, and folks are like, oh, I got this person that's a real estate agent that can help you, and I know this person that can help you with this, and they've just gone out of their way. Cool. And it's funny, we joke that there's Southern hospitality and things like that, but Maine really does have a lot of just great, genuine folks that again, they didn't have to be as friendly and helpful as they were, and they made working here and the transition here really, really smooth.
As we start to work into wrapping up here for this episode, your build that I knew a little bit of the history of what you did at Augusta, but I don't think I realized how far on the beginning side there was. And I obviously knew a little bit about, how far the ending side of so where you came from. I guess I didn't realize where the origin really started. That's quite amazing. As you now are, I'm not going to say doing the same thing, because I don't think Maine is having a bunch of softball and basketball players moonlight as a cross country team. So you're a little bit more head start on that. But as you start looking and planning how you're going to take Maine from your origin here in 2023, 2024, when you started, to what 2034 is going to look like, what's got you excited? What are some things you have to do a little bit differently? What's the plan that I assume you have, because you've done this blueprint on a much harder scale in Augusta?
Yeah, no, for sure. So, at Augusta, we had to learn to do a lot with less, or a lot with nothing, using high school facilities, things like that to accomplish things. I mean, to have folks, doing and accomplishing a lot of things we did at AU with very, very minimal scholarship, very, very minimal travel budget, things like that. Again, no facilities and stuff. We have a lot of, again, we're not flush with cash. We're not a Power 5 school, and we don't, we always try to be upfront with kids in the recruiting process about those things as well. Is that, we're going to take what we've got, and we're going to look for reasons why we can accomplish other bigger goals that we want to and stuff. And so I think, we've got plans to build a brand new track. New Balance has come on and been a huge sponsor for that as well. They're a big sponsor, obviously, for the entire athletic department and university. They're a fantastic partner. So we're excited about that. We're going to start construction on that sometime this fall. It's been phenomenal to have a voice and have a say in what it's going to look like and what we want to do, so we can try to host some bigger things and stuff like that down the road and stuff. The indoor track is going to be getting resurfaced soon and things like that. So we've got a lot of great resources and access. We've got, a phenomenal support staff and things like that. We've got a phenomenal athletic director, and Jude Kelly, who, I mean, his vision for what he wants the entire athletic department to be in just the Northeast region alone is quite a lofty goal. And I think, like, all of us are trying to kind of see what we can do to kind of be a part of that and help him achieve his ultimate goal for the entire department. But I think for me is, we had two athletes, one in the women's hammer, one in the men's 10K make regionals this past year. In cross country, my first year in 22, we were what were we? We were fifth on the men's side, and we were seventh on the women's side. We were second this last fall for the men, and fourth, 18 points out of first place on the women's side. So first through fourth were separated by 18 points. We had the number 2 female runner, on the women's side. We had, another young lady was all conference as well. The previous year, we didn't have anybody all conference in cross country on the women's side. The men had a few guys get all conference this year, which was phenomenal. When last year, the year before, we only had 2 guys. Indoor, we had, one guy was a freshman and won the 5K indoor last year. This year, we had a guy who he won the 3K, but he also was like top. I think it was like 5 in the mile. He was second in the 5K. He went out and won the 10K and set the school record. He went sub 29 and sub 14, first time ever in school history. We had a young lady break the 3,000 meter indoor record as a redshirt freshman. And we've just got so many really great results, and those are just like the top things. I've got a young lady who was like a 226, 227, 800 meter runner. She ran 219 this past year on the 800. Accomplished some great things. We had another young man who was like a 202, 203, 800 meter runner. He ran 156 outdoor and things like that. We had my assistant coach had a freshman run 47 seconds, who I think broke 50 once maybe in high school and things like that. And so, for us, it's like, there's a lot of really good talent in Maine. We got to stop some other New England schools from taking that talent. But, a lot of these kids are, and again, a lot of it's because the way that the season has shifted so late for them, they kind of develop a little late. But the coaches in Maine, the high school coaches here, are great stewards of these talents. I mean, it's phenomenal how they don't burn these kids out, because it would be easy, I think, to be like, all right, we got to give everything we can of this kid now. I want them to be, because there are kids that are leaving Maine that, you look at like, the top, like, I don't want to spit too many names, but some of the top runners in the NCAA, and now even some top pros like Brooks Beast has a couple of, they've got some of these kids. They're all Maine kids, and it's like, we've got to do a better job of trying to keep a lot of those kids in the state of Maine and attract some other kids from around New England area and stuff, and even a little bit of international recruiting. We've got some folks coming in. Canada gets in-state tuition here, which is really good. So that's definitely a big selling point. And, we've got, a couple of international kids coming in next year. And I think for us, it's about, taking, the best of that we can, we can bring in and give them a quality education here at the University of Maine, which is definitely something they can do. But then taking advantage of the resources we have and continue to kind of cultivate so that, I know we left regionals, and my assistant coach, I brought him down there with me, my sprints and jumps coach. He didn't have an athlete down there. He left and he's like, I'm going to have someone here next year. And if he's hungry, that's going to bleed over to his athletes. We had an athlete go to U20s and compete in the 400 there. And so it's like, I know that young man left that experience. He's extremely hungry. And so it's like, that's the things we got to do. We got to take advantage of the opportunities that we're given. Get our athletes to be, just excited and pumped about the sport, put our passion and love and excitement into them so that they can, take that and understand that we believe in them and that we know that they can accomplish great things. And I think that if we do that, and it's just going to be a snowball effect, and things are going to continue to kind of rise and grow. And that's what we did at Augusta University. And I'm very fortunate that a former athlete of mine has taken that over, and he's done a phenomenal job of growing and continuing things and following and creating his own blueprint for what he wants to do down there. And, now that's my job here is, I had a mentor in college. He said, you should always try to leave any organization, job, whatever, better than what you found it. That doesn't mean it was in bad shape or disarray. It just means you should always try to leave it better than the way you found it. I felt quite confident. That's what I did at Augusta University,
No doubt.
where we were to where we, finished up. And that's what I want to do here at the University of Maine. I want to leave it better than the way I found it, so that the next person that comes in, their job is to take what we've done and build upon that, down the road.
Well, yeah, I think it's kind of an obvious about Augusta for sure. I mean, again, I think the transformation and, we have a saying around here at Gill, healthy things grow. And, again, that example of Augusta. And I have no doubts, when you talk about, I think the most interesting thing, that kind of got lost a little bit in what you're talking about there is for regionals this year, or for first rounds this year, you had a distance runner and a thrower qualify. As a, I love busting myths. As a head coach, distance focused, all I hear about is how you distance coaches don't care about any other events. You could just take all your scholarships and have a 100-person cross country team and let them run the 8 up to the 10K, all this kind of blah, 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 blah. It's obviously you care about all events. So I think when you start talking about, call it, I sort of had this vision of like a fence around Maine of like, hey, if you're good enough to run, our level of track and field, this should be a serious consideration for you. I think when athletes and coaches see like, hey man, it's not just distance runners, they got field eventers and things like that. I think that's cool. I think new facilities are awesome, and all those infrastructure type things are super important, obviously important to me and what we do here at Gill Athletics. But all of that, I think, pales in comparison to a coaching staff that is hungry, as you mentioned with your assistant coach, that's under a leadership like yours. That's what is going to continue to grow and be healthy there for the Black Bears. So it's super exciting to hear and see that coming from you and your staff there. And I think I have lost him on the internet, but that's okay because it's actually right where we need to call it quits for the day. So I'm going to do a quick little outro here and hopefully he'll pop back in, but just so grateful for Adam today, Mr. Batman himself. Are you there? Adam? All right, well, it's recording. Super glad and proud of Adam for you being here today, man. Obviously, your leadership is super important and valuable. It's what track coaches do all around the country. And to see, the growth that you had in Augusta, there's no doubts in our minds that you're going to have that same, if not even better, if that's even possible, there at the Black Bears of Maine. So appreciate your time, Adam. It's the most valuable thing that you can give us here. Really great.